I want to talk about frequency because most people think that frequencies are just waves. But I want you to think about frequency another way. Now, when the pineal gland becomes electrically activated, many times we start to see these fractal patterns. With our eyes open, with our eyes closed, we start to see these complex geometric patterns. And the more orderly those patterns are, the more coherent the energy is. It is those standing waves of energy that the coherent brain and the coherent heart will begin to transduce, just like a barcode. A laser reads the barcode and it interprets the information. The pineal gland decodes that information into profound pictures and imagery. Here's my greatest definition of the pineal gland. The pineal gland, when fully activated, is a crystalline superconductor that receives information through the transduction of energetic vibrational signals, that's frequencies beyond the senses, the quantum field, into biological tissue, the brain and the mind, in the form of meaningful imagery, the same way as an antenna translates different channels onto a TV screen. And when the pineal gland is activated, now we have information that's being downloaded into our nervous system that's transcendent of our senses. Now, what's the side effect of that? Here comes the profound mystical moment. You now may have the experience of moving from space-time to time-space, where all of those dimensions exist. Now you may have the experience of coming out of your body, traveling down a long tunnel of light, your body being filled with energy that you are now perceiving. You may experience a past, present, or a future life that's all happening in the eternal now. Serotonin and melatonin are dependent through our senses on the frequency and the wavelength of visible light. You close your eyes now, and all of a sudden, you're no longer processing visible light. Melatonin levels start to go up, and the pineal gland begins to receive the input and begin to activate the pituitary to create more coordination or more neuropeptides that create more harmony in the hormonal centers. And the posterior pituitary begins to release oxytocin, and the person feels grateful to be alive. One field that's going out, all of a sudden that second field reverses, and that frequency now is going to cause melatonin to get an upgrade. In other words, melatonin now is going to transmute or change into some very powerful molecules. And melatonin is already an antioxidant, but now melatonin gets a very big upgrade, and now it produces two of the most powerful antioxidants known to man. Now, what's the significance of that? Antioxidants are anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-stroke, anti-neurodegenerative, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial. Melatonin already causes us to relax, but now it's going to begin to produce what's called the benzodiazepine. These chemicals fit into the same receptors as serotonin and melatonin, but they carry a very different message. The release of these benzodiazepines is literally going to sedate further the neocortex and shut down the survival centers in the brain. There's a suppression of overthinking, of overanalyzing, of thinking about the future or the past. The body relaxes into the present moment. Take that molecule and tweak it again, and you have the most powerful hallucinogenic known to man, dimethyltryptamine. And now the person is going to have profound, lucid inner vision. In other words, melatonin already causes us to sleep. But when it becomes a transducer, that frequency then is transduced into profound imagery, the same way a TV antenna takes frequency and turns it into a picture. And the pineal gland has been called the third eye because we're having a profound inner vision that is more real than the world we live in. And we can say then, the person is having a full-on sensory experience without their senses. And the second chemical made from the posterior pituitary is called vasopressin, antidiuretic hormone. And when vasopressin levels are elevated, the cells of the body now can store more water, And now the cells are prepared for a greater frequency, and all of the cells now begin to oscillate and produce more coherent light and information. And we could say in one moment, the person's getting a biological upgrade. Information from the field is literally changing the human operating system. I want to show you just a few brain scans to unify all this information. This is normal brain activity, and the person is in low beta brainwave patterns. Now they go into a meditation. We start to see the energy in the brain begin to escalate. That person is transitioning from high beta, and they're starting to move into very coherent gamma. By the same means, this person is having a full-on sensory experience without their senses. This person, second-generation Holocaust survivor, suffering from anxiety and depression, a psychotherapist, did everything he could to change his state. In one moment, this person has a transcendental experience that's transcendent of this three-dimensional reality, and in an instant, his depression and his anxiety changes and goes away. Now, when we have two waves that are coherent, that are oscillating in order or coherence, they summate and produce a higher wave. Now, what's the significance of that? The higher the wave, the higher the amplitude, the higher the energy in the brain, which means the more coherent the brain becomes, the higher the energy will exist in the brain. Check this out now. What we started to notice is that when people begin to do this properly, the first thing that happens is we start seeing theta as a precursor before the person goes into an aroused state. In other words, they have to settle their body down and begin to move into such a slow brainwave pattern that now they're suppressing the thinking neocortex, and in low-level theta, lights are out in the identity. The known self is now shut off. Once they're in that slow brainwave state, it's as if theta acts as a carrier wave. The parasympathetic nervous system is activated, the person is relaxed, and now when they lock into a frequency, the arousal takes place. Coherent theta becomes the carrier for gamma. And check this out. Person is opening their awareness and connecting to the field of energy and information, and now we're seeing 10 standard deviations outside of normal in theta. And whenever we see this in a brain scan, we know what's going to happen next. The person is going to go into an aroused state. This person is 200 standard deviations outside of normal as they travel from high beta right into gamma. Last one now. We start to see body is sleeping in theta. The mind is very active and very awake. There's coherence in every single brainwave state from delta all the way to high beta. When we see this, we know the person's going from a slow frequency of theta. Now they're operating from their limbic brain. If they can tune in like a radio receiver and tune into frequency and information, all of a sudden, here we go. There's that theta brainwave state. What's going to happen next? It's going to start to build. And next thing you know, they're moving into that high gamma brainwave state. And that high gamma brainwave state then begins to cause the area of the pineal gland and Brodmann's area 30 to begin to switch on. And that person moves to 400 standard deviations outside of normal. That's a lot of energy in their brain. So by now, I hope you understand that when the pineal gland becomes activated, it literally begins to transduce powerful frequencies into meaningful imagery. Now, what's the side effect of that? When the person returns back to their senses, we don't see things how they are. We see things how we are. And since experience enriches the brain, and it does, and experience produces an emotion in the body, when the person comes back to their senses, now their brain is wired to perceive what has always existed, but they didn't have the circuits to perceive. And in a sense, our spectrum of reality is broadened.